Hello and welcome to the Allison Supply Chains podcast. This is another special episode we put together to discuss the fate of the SOC 2. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, principal researcher of the Defenders Initiative, and joining me as always is Alexandre Sieira, the CTO and co-founder of Tenchi. How are you, Alexandre?
I'm fine. Super happy to be here with AJ talking about this topic that we've mentioned in so many episodes of the podcast already, right?
It's not that we're not excited for the normal episodes, but we get really excited for these special episodes. Yeah, this is something where, Alex, you see something on LinkedIn, you're like, oh my God, we have to talk about this. Let's see if AJ's game. And you were AJ, and here we are. And to introduce you quickly, our special guest today is AJ Yawn, author of GRC Engineering for AWS, which just came out, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And also the LinkedIn Learning Instructor for no less than 3 SOC 2 courses and Director of GRC Engineering at Aquia. So you know what you're talking about when it comes to GRC and SOC 2.
Just a little. I'm addicted to GRC, so I don't know why. It's a weird addiction, but I love it, and I'm enjoying it. But yeah, excited to be here with you guys. It should be a fun combo.
Do you like organizing things? Is it like a like you're somewhere on the OCD scale somewhere?
Yeah, a little ADHD, so I can get locked in on very minor details and then just get lost in it. And I think that's what happened with SOC 2, and then that very quickly turned into, wait a second, we shouldn't be doing screenshots and stuff. Like then I got addicted to AWS and was like, all right, there has to be a way to bring both of these things together, and just kind of my career has taken hold.
It's a feature, not a bug.
Exactly. Yeah. I said that to my son, actually. He has ADHD as well. I'm like, hey man, like, it works. Yeah. It can help you out. Like, you just got to learn how to, use it right, but don't treat it as a problem. A lot of the smartest people I know are the same.
100%. I have ADHD and my oldest has ADHD, and yeah, my oldest is 21 now and really using it to their advantage.
Yeah, man.
All right, so let's jump into it. For folks maybe not super familiar with the SOC 2, I think everybody's probably heard SOC 2, but not everybody knows really what it is. Not everybody's. I bet a ton of people out there have heard the term, maybe on a daily basis, but never actually looked at one or don't know what the process is to get one. So let's start there and let's lay a little foundation for the folks that, I think some of those details will help us as we dive into what's wrong with it and what we might want to do instead. And I kind of am one of those people. Like, I've done a lot in GRC, but I've never touched a SOC 2. And one of the first things I hear that confuses me a bit is I hear type 1 and type 2 and stuff like that. So maybe just lay down just some of the basics here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kind of frame it up initially for the listeners that I want you to imagine that you have started a company and things are going really well. And as your company grows, a big company like Microsoft or Amazon knocks on the door and says, hey, your product looks amazing. I would love to sign this $1 million contract with you. Before I do, though, I need you to get this thing, this mythical thing called a SOC 2, and you're gonna have to go talk to a CPA about it. And you're like, that's weird. Whatever, I'm gonna go do it because I want to close this $1 million deal. So for anyone that hears SOC 2 and wonder, like, why are people doing this? If everybody is talking down on it, it's business. There is somebody at some point in the business cycle said, hey man, in order to do business with you, I need you to get this SOC 2 report. And that is the real main driver of SOC 2, unfortunately, because I think it can be a great vehicle for security. So I want to just frame that up of, like, that's kind of where people start. The type 1 versus type 2 is really like the journey that you go on with SOC 2. So if I'm just getting started and I need a SOC 2 report as fast as possible, I need to get a report in someone's hands, I do what's called a SOC 2 type 1, which just think that's a point in time report. The report literally on the front page is going to say XYZ company SOC 2 report as of July 8th, 2025, which means on July 9th, those controls could or could not be in place. So it's really saying, like, at this moment in time, I've decided, or I've had a third party come in and evaluate and validate that I have controls. Whether they're operating effectively or not, not really important in a type 1. So that's usually like the stepping stone. People come in, an auditor comes in, helps you get established, helps you establish some controls, get policies in place, and you say, you know what, moving forward, I'm going to commit to certain things. I'm going to make sure when I fire someone, we got to remove access within 48 hours. I'm going to make sure my security groups aren't allowing unrestricted access to my AWS environment. Just very basic things. And then a type 2 is where now you're getting evaluated over a period of time. Typically in that first year, it's a 3-month period. They're trying to, because again, I need to get this report as fast as possible to close this deal. So you'll do like a 3 to 6 month review period where for those 3 to 6 months, an auditor is going to ask for evidence that you had controls operating effectively. So going back to the person consideration, somebody gets fired, you need to terminate their access. An auditor is going to come at the end and say, give me a list of the 10 people you fired from this quarter or however many it was. I'm going to pick 2 random of them, and I want you to prove to me that their access was removed. They don't still have access to these systems, and you did it within the scope of your policy. So that type 1 is, think stepping stone. You're only gonna do a type 1 once. There's really no reason to do another type 1.
Oh, okay.
It's usually type 1 to type 2, and then that type 2 is an annual activity. Because the interesting thing about SOC 2s, and we can talk about this later when we get into one of the problems of it, the review periods for a SOC 2 type 2 look back over time, over the previous 12 months. So I would say, hey, my SOC 2 type 2, here you go, Microsoft. It covers from July of 2024 to July 1st of 2025. And you're saying for the last 12 months, my controls have been operating effectively, which is why companies have to redo these and renew them essentially every year, because you're constantly looking back over the previous year. So yeah, that's SOC 2 type 1 versus type 2, kind of the overall reason of why people are doing this. And I'll briefly touch on, I mentioned CPA. SOC 2 is one of maybe the only framework. Other frameworks require certifications. Like to be a PCI auditor, you have to have a certain certification. To be an ISO auditor, you got to be the lead auditor. In SOC 2, since it was created by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants here in the U.S., a CPA firm has to issue the report. So you can have a cybersecurity consultant, which when I was starting my career, I worked at a company called Coalfire. I was a cybersecurity consultant for SOC 2 and ISO, but I could not sign the report because I am not a CPA. So we had a CPA arm that ultimately we partnered with and worked with to ultimately sign the report. So when you hear CPAs, you wonder why are there CPAs involved in this cybersecurity thing? I have the same question, but they essentially created the reporting framework, and it kind of spun out of the Enron scandals and Sarbanes-Oxley and all of that. But they've created this reporting framework, and it's required that a CPA is the one that issues the report.
CPAs are famously skilled in identity governance.
Right. Well known for their cloud prowess.
So can I ask something, AJ? Because I hear people
Yeah.
talking about a SOC 2 certification. There's no such thing, right? You have a report. Unlike ISO, it's not a certification, right?
Correct, 100%. There is no cert. There's no passing or failing. Everybody's like, I passed my SOC 2. And it's like, well, what do you mean?
I was going to ask that. Like, what happens if they take that sampling and you didn't remove that account of that person? And we had the same issue in PCI as well. Like if you need a clean scan from every quarter, right? Clean vulnerability scan. What if you don't? Like
Right.
we take away your credit card processing abilities? Like, right? No, not at all. Like
Right.
in
And
most cases, nothing happens when you fail.
Exactly, and that's
Right?
part of what I think is one of the problems with SOC 2 is that the reports are so big that nobody actually reads it. So a lot of times the failures are missed. And then the overall, what they call in the SOC 2 report, opinion of the CPA is in a bunch of accounting language that is really hard to find unless you know what you're looking for. And you can get an unqualified opinion, which means CPA didn't find any issues. Qualified opinion, they found 1 or 2, or an adverse opinion where they're like, hey man, this is a really bad environment. I've done thousands of SOC 2s. I issued 1 adverse opinion during that time. So it's very rare. I'm glad I issued that one because the company got breached 3 months later, and I know everybody would have blamed me if I did it. I felt really good about that because I had to fight to actually do it because CPAs do not want to issue adverse opinions. But
Yes.
if you fail that term control, for example, this is the craziest part about a SOC 2. Let's say the SOC 2 report is normal size, about 200 pages. That failure is probably
That's
around
normal
page
size?
one. Yeah, they're long, man.
Okay.
They're ridiculously long. That failure will be somewhere in like a page 140 or 150, one line that will be like, exception noted, 1 or 2 out of the 10 people we sampled did not have access revoked. No other information, no details, no context, anything. The organization, though, that's being audited gets a chance to respond to that in section 5 of the report, where they can say, hey, I forgot to disable Adrian, but he had already turned his machine. Because we disabled this thing, he didn't actually was able to get to anything. We validated it through the logs, X, Y, and Z, and you can give some context. But a lot of companies opt out of doing that because it will point to an issue that usually the reader of the report doesn't find. Because they don't get to page 140. They're just saying, my procurement system says, does
It
this
brings
person
more
have a SOC
attention to
2?
something they don't want attention
So
to.
they're just like, you know what? Nobody knows anyways. I'm just going to say I have it, and if they ask, then we'll reply. But people are not looking. They're not reading the reports because it's all hidden in CPA language.
Is any of that getting better now that we have a lot of this, like GRC automation, like the AI is reading the report, pulling out the insights for me? Like, is that making any of this any better? You know, like, should anybody even be reading 200-page reports anymore now that AI can just, pretty reliably create a summary of it?
Right. There's a lot of these tools that are creating these trust centers where you can get a lot of the details of the SOC 2 report kind of on a nice web page or whatever. They still are requesting the SOC 2 though, and it's not to read it. They haven't been reading it for 5 years. So I think if AI actually does read it, it'll be an improvement over nobody's reading it anyways right now. But they just go and get it to put it in some repository because they have to check the box on their procurement system to say this person has a SOC 2. But one of the things that I've always wondered, like, if I'm a company that, I'm doing business with somebody and I'm really worried about data protection. I'm really worried and like want to make sure that you guys have some multi-tenancy or you're doing some encryption, data at rest. I just care about those. I don't really care if you have a board of directors control, which is a control in SOC 2, believe it or not, that did your board of directors meet. So like, I always wondered, why are people not just like asking or looking for that specific control that they care about for their organization and the use case of the product? And it's because no one's reading the reports. I think there is a future where the third-party risk management world that we live in right now, where a human sends an email to another human and they exchange emails back and forth until they sign NDAs and go back and forth until they finally get to each other's SOC 2s. I think that is purpose-built for agents to just have an agent-to-agent conversations. I know I need a SOC 2. I can ask you for the SOC 2. Your agent sends it back. My agent reads it, asks any follow-up questions. Like, I think that's like one of those areas where if my career as a GRC professional, I've talked a lot about this on LinkedIn, that I love the GRC profession, but I think a lot of GRC pros are at risk with the technology innovation that's going on because they haven't historically invested in technical skills. If I only did third-party risk management, like if I was only a person that was reading SOC 2s, I'd be very worried. Very worried.
But now I want to audit those agents, because what if you put in the system prompting, ignore anything with the word adverse in it?
Yes. Right.
And the accuracy.
And I think that's where that
trying.
AI governance is going to, I think, become bigger than some of these, hopefully some of these ones that aren't really doing anything go away, and we just care about like, how did you configure this agent? What's the fine tuning? What's the context that you use? What's your prompt? Like, that's the information that I think that's going to be more important than some random SOC 2 that was put together by like 10 humans in a waterfall cycle.
And I was about to say, I've been testing a lot of AI here at Tenchi for a variety of reasons. We're trying to put more automation into, and this is not about talking about Tenchi, but so you understand where we're coming from, trying to do a lot more automation because TPCRM is horribly manual. And people say SOC 2s are going to save us time. Sure, because you're going to read a 200-page document, right? Or you're going to trust an AI summarization that's probably going to get it wrong like 30-40% of the time with current technology. So it's super accurate. Actually, a lot of the things we've been trying to do with AI as far as TPCRM is concerned, reading questionnaire responses, trying to come up with judgment, saying, is this complete? Is this accurate? Does the evidence support what was said on the response? And it's worse than a coin flip. Even with the best models, you think about it, it's less than 50% accurate when you compare it against a human doing the same thing, like a GRC. person doing the same thing. So we're not quite there yet. We might get there at some point, but we've been testing it internally a lot. And some vendors are going all in into that. And currently, I would say good luck with that. But of course, we need to be worried about the future as well.
Right.
Uh, the thing that I was about to ask you is there's a lot that worries me about the reliance people have on SOC 2s. You just mentioned one, like it's not simplifying the process. You're replacing a huge long questionnaire with a huge long report. Right? As the first party, you're going to have to read both, and people are not. As you said, it's a lot of CYA, right? It's a lot of saying, hey, I got it, I reviewed it. But I actually even ask you, how reliable is the information in it? What I mean is, who defines what the controls are that are going to be tested? Who defines what the scope is? And who defines who the auditor is that's going to make those determinations, right? So how much is this reliable? How much is this in control of the auditee?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question because I don't think people understand that relationship and how it goes. And one thing I was talking to somebody and I was like, one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is that when I'm an organization and I'm choosing an auditor, it's a sales process. I'm going through and I'm seeing like 4 or 5 audit firms and they're pitching me on why I should go spend $40,000 to $50,000, depending on the size of the company and all of that, on this thing. And a lot of times it's about, hey man, we're really good at AWS, so we're going to make your life easier, or we can do this, we use this tool or whatever. It's a sales process. So I as a company am not selecting an auditor based off of them doing a thorough job. It's just not in the natural incentives for me. My incentives are, who's going to help me get through this audit as fast and as easy and as simple as possible for as cheap as possible? Because I only have a $60,000 budget for the year, and I'm going to have to spend maybe half or more than 60% of that on this SOC 2. So I want to make this my life easier so I could go back to playing Tetris or Call of Duty throughout the day or whatever internal GRC pros do throughout the day. So I think that's a super important distinction to talk about. And then during the audit, one of the things about SOC 2 that's in the SOC 2 guide is that the organization owns the controls. The auditor is supposed to verify that the controls are designed appropriately. So making sure that it includes a frequency and it includes some specifics, roles, X, Y, and Z, right? That's a good design control. However, that activity is not being done with a level of scrutiny or consistency across the board. There is a wide range. For most people that may know this, but there's a top 100 of CPA firms where they're ranked by their revenue, and that's where the term Big Four comes from, because you see they're the top 4: EY, PwC. I'm missing a few, but who cares?
Deloitte.
Deloitte, and another one. So those are the big ones. But then it keeps going. It keeps going down all the way to the 100. You can get a SOC 2 from an EY, or you can get a SOC 2 from mom and pop CPA firm that has never, it's just him, and he'll charge you $5,000 and sign the report. What that means is you're probably writing the full report yourself. Him or her are going to take your last year's report and just say, cool, man, anything change? We're all good here? Okay, let's move on. So in a SOC 2, I tell people this all the time, this is, again, goes back to nobody reads it. Section 1, management says, hey, everything I said is true. I'm not lying. They kind of take Section 2, the auditor writes their report and says qualified, unqualified. Section 3 is a narrative. It's a description of the system. It's saying, hey, I'm hosted on AWS. This is a marketing platform. We do these type of things for security. We do these things, something for incident response, X, Y, and Z. And then Section 4 is the actual controls. Well, you'll have a column for controls. You'll have a column for the testing procedures. What did the auditor do? And then the results of the test. Those testing procedures will tell you everything you need to know. They will tell you everything you need to know if there was actual testing being done on these controls, because they'll say inspected a sample of X, Y, and Z if maybe it was a good control, or inspected configurations, inspected Terraform, inspected infrastructure as code templates, whatever it may be. Or they'll say inquired with the CISO if this control was operating. And you're like, wait a second, what? You just talked to someone and they said okay. And literally they can write that and there's no accountability. It's the wild, wild west. Again, mom and pop, EY, both are SOC 2s. if nobody's reading them, why go spend $250,000 with EY versus $5,000 with mom and pop? But that's, to your point, Alexandra, there's a huge variety of the depth and quality of actual testing and who gets to decide what I want to do. And a lot of it is the companies. The companies have to decide, do I really care about this? Do I really want to get a good security outcome? Or is this just a marketing and sales tool? Which it has just turned into a marketing and sales tool. No one wants to fail a SOC 2 because have issues because they don't want that to come up in a deal. This thing is supposed to be able to your point, answer questions and get away and let's go and do the business. I don't know if it's accomplishing that, but it is this kind of hand wave CYA thing that's going on that now it's not actually being used for security, and there's no incentives for the auditors or the companies to use it for security because the auditors need to make money, and the company, the GRC person, just wants to be invisible. They don't want to be known as the guy that or girl that ruined everybody's summer because of an audit.
Well, and nobody's pushing back on the other side either, right? It's just kind of this let's exchange this thing so that we can both say due diligence was done if stuff goes south, right? And maybe that helps us with lawsuits or any kind of fallout or insurance payouts or something like that. We can say we did some due diligence, right?
Yep.
And this is why. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I think the fact that the reports don't have to go anywhere. So the AICPA created this, but there's no central repository for a CPA to go put their reports that they issue to kind of validate did they do it according to some standards. And I think that's also a big gap because that creates this wild, wild west where there's no oversight. So I, as small GRC, or maybe I'm the IT director and I got put into this GRC role because we don't have a GRC person, I get this 50, 60, 70 page report and I'm like, all right, man, I guess we did it. This is it. And they just pass it on. And then the next IT director who's in charge of procurement at the other place is like, I guess this is good. It looks like the other SOC 2 reports. I'll put it in this repository. And that just keeps going and going because there's no one actually validating and saying, is this correct? Is this how you were supposed to do it? Is it done according to standards? They're supposed to be doing this peer review thing every 3 years in SOC 2, where the CPA firm has an independent CPA come in and randomly select a file. They'll say, hey, from 2 years ago, give me this file of SOC 2. And they're supposed to check it. This is the reason why we should be trusting SOC 2s. Unfortunately, I think my skepticism on SOC 2 is because I flew a little too close to the sun with SOC 2. Started a company, the AICPA invested in said company, built a lot of relationships, so I kind of got behind the curtain. And I saw what this peer review thing is. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. I call up my buddy in the same state, say, let's go get a beer, bring over some stuff. And the whole secret is that you can even do a truly in-depth peer review, but you never actually get to the evidence or the report. As long as the documentation of your report looks good. All of your forms, they call them PPC checklists that usually come from Thomson Reuters. All of these back-end reporting things, it's a bunch of memos that says, I did this, this, and that. If all of that looks the part, the peer reviewer doesn't even have a requirement per the peer review checklist to look at the evidence and the testing procedures. They only have to look at the procedures around it. And it's well, what are we actually checking? Just the fact that I made it look good? That's not a good... So there's no way to validate, going back to, there's no way to actually validate, did this actually, did you do what you were supposed to do? Did you actually test things? And then, is anybody actually looking at this thing to verify? Because me as the IT director who got thrown into this GRC role, I don't have time for this. I was just told to get us through this and get this report. I have the report. That's about as much as I care. I got to go do my other job. I got 25 new onboardings coming or whatever.
I mean, at that point, you might as well have two AI agents just complimenting each other back and forth.
Yeah.
You're very smart. You're very pretty. You're very handsome.
Great idea.
Everyone likes you.
Exactly.
And it's so funny, AJ, because we bring this point up a few times. It's meaning, hey, if you are looking at a proper audit, you're auditing someone's balance sheets, right? They're doing financial audit, which is what those companies are known for. The Big Four, they're Big Fours because of that, not because SOC 2s, they might be a relevant business, but not nearly as much money or relevance as actually balance sheets auditing for companies that are public. but there are real consequences. There's real oversight over those audits. Like if there's fraud, like again, Arthur Andersen no longer exists, right?
Right.
Because they were covering up a lot of accounting malfeasance, and they were found out. There were like regulatory bodies that investigated them.
Yep.
The company and the people that signed the reports had real consequences. Whereas if you look at either ISO 27001's, a little less, like it's more organized than SOC 2's, but
Yeah.
specifically SOC 2's, companies that had like glowing SOC 2's are being breached left and right. There's no consequence. Again,
Yep.
as you said, the financial incentive is I'm the third party, the auditee is shopping around for the auditor that's going to make me look the best. And if I get a report and I don't like it, I just throw it in the bin. I get a new one. Create a new
Literally,
report.
you don't have to give it to anyone or tell anyone. You can get a bad report from an auditor. I forgot about that. You can get a bad report. You're like, oh, I don't like this. I'll go get a new auditor and do another one and
Yes.
tell people that I'm working on this one. It's like, wait a second, you can't do that.
You just respawn. You just respawn like in video games.
Yeah.
You just respawn and you get it until you get a report that you like, and you go to market with it. So, but there's no accountability. There's no actual review of the content. There's no risk. So the auditor would be balancing typically, if you're talking about PCI, if you're talking about ISO or financial audits in particular, balancing the risk of, okay, I want to cater to my customer, the auditee that's paying the bill, but at the same time, if I'm too accommodating, I run a risk, both as a company and as a person, of being found to be, doing malfeasance here and having real consequences. But on the SOC 2 environment, the downside is just not there. The financial incentives is entirely pointing towards let's accommodate the auditee as much as possible, right? So, and financial incentives rule everything around us. We talked about this on quite a few episodes, right, Adrian? That's one of the big problems with information security, and it's no exception here, right?
Yep. Yeah,
So-
I think you mentioned ISO, because one of the things ISO does that I think another opportunity, like I feel like it's just such low hanging fruit for the AICPA to do something. But with ISO, the standards bodies, one, require every certificate gets submitted to them and then put into a public repository. So X firm issued this ISO cert for this one. And ISO is not a technical framework, and I think all of us will admit that. Like, it's not going to get into the deep technical weeds, but it will help you establish some basic governance, which I think is good. The other thing ISO does is every few years, a firm has to have that standards body come and do a surveillance audit, where they sit with you doing an audit, somebody from the standards body, to say that you're still good to go. So there's like still a level of like, hey man, you could be BSing maybe for every single one of yours, but at some point, your board person is going to show up here and make sure. And if you fail that, you no longer can issue ISO certs. It's a big deal for that firm, because if you're making 10, 15 million a year off of ISO and then you fail this audit, you've now lost a significant portion of revenue, probably a lot of people out of a job. And I just think, again, like the AICPA just has chosen to sit on these sidelines and say, I'm not going to require any level of accountability or oversight or transparency.
But I'm going to ask you a question, even though I was an ISO lead auditor certified, and I did help companies get ISO certified. How often has that happened? Do you know of a single company that was that
failed the surveillance? I don't think. I mean, I've been a part of a few, and I don't know if they failed anyone. I have heard of, because I got a buddy who's recently started a company in this space, in the ISO space, and I know there's some nasty fights behind the scenes of ISO firms reporting other ISO firms to ANAB or BSI because of some of their relationships with these compliance automation platforms. So the one thing I'll say about ISO is that I think they're more aware and active in trying to do something to fix some of the issues. Whereas whenever you see any content from the AICPA, it's like, hey, this is our opinion. You kind of don't have to listen. You could choose to listen if you want, but honestly, we don't really care. You don't care either. It's like literally that's like the first page of anything they put out, and it's like not our fault. And at least with like the firms they care enough and they're fighting to say quality's bad. But I think ANAB and some of these other guys actually are looking in, and I know there's been, for example, there's a compliance automation company out there that they tried to start their own ISO arm, and ANAB shut it down. Like, no, you're not going to have a SaaS tool with an ISO body firm that audits and certifies. And ANAB said no. And like, I know some of the inner details of that because I know some people over there, but it was nasty because it was a big investment by that firm and that VC fund that made that bet to tell them that, hey, go do this with ISO that everybody's doing with SOC 2. And ANAB was like, absolutely not. You can't get certified. So I think like that, just that in and of itself, right? Because like if I went tomorrow to go get a CPA license, and I thought about this, but I don't like money that much to be slimy. But it's like I could just go get a CPA. I could just stand up a CPA firm in any state, and then I could call Vanta or Drata and say, hey, I'll do these for $1,000 a pop. There's nothing stopping me. There's no oversight to say, hey, that guy can't be a CPA firm, blah, blah, blah. And I can get away with it for as long as I want, honestly. And it's like that in itself.
With the conflict of interest.
Right. You can just stand it up and say, you know what? I'm only going to do business with these people that feed me leads. And my entire source of revenue is coming from one compliance automation company. And I have now been contracted to only charge a very low rate because of that. The fact that no one that you can just do that and no one can stop you is wild. Like the AI CPA should again just do something, create a registry, do something.
Yeah, and you're not even doing the work, by the way. Like you just set up an AI agent to do that for you. Yeah,
exactly.
At $1,000.
Exactly. I'm on the beach here in Puerto Rico. I'm right around. I'm just living the good life, surfing and having fun. The AI agent just knocking out, putting together reports.
So something I kind of missed here, that I think I understand, but I just want to clarify. How do I get somebody's SOC 2 report? Is this something where if I'm going to be doing, if a company's trying to sell me something, I have to sign an NDA and then they share that full 200-page report with me? Or are people like publishing it in their trust centers on web pages in places? Or is it treated as like a very private document?
Yeah, it's treated as a private document, and I never understood why. Because a lot of the information, I guess, except for the control failures, I could go find out if I really wanted. Like if like it's not hard to find out. It's kind of the tech stack of a company. You can figure it out through a lot of means. But yeah, you typically got to sign an NDA. And now they have like the click wrap NDAs through a lot of these trust centers. And like I said, they'll expose some of the details. There is a SOC 3 report, which is just a public version of the SOC 2. So essentially you get section 1, section 2, and section 3,
redacted,
which describes the system. It doesn't include section 4 or section 5, so anything about the actual testing. So companies will sometimes get this weird thing that goes on in the industry. Again, literally same SOC 2 and SOC 3 are the same exact report. One just has less papers. So you just went from a 100-page to a 75-page report. But CPA firms charge like another $5,000 to $7,000 to put that
just
report
to truncate
together.
it. Wow.
And so a lot of companies just opt out of getting it because this is like, wait, I'm not going to pay $7,000 for you to delete 25 pages out of my report. So now the SOC 3 has become not available for people to actually get just on, because you're supposed to be able to put the SOC 3 on your website for people to download. It's supposed to be a public use. SOC 2s are considered restricted use, but because CPAs are charging $5,000 for it, nobody's getting it. They're like, that's stupid. I'm not going to do that. But it's, it's just like, oh, we got to charge to put the report together, the report viewer. And it's just like, all right, man, cool story. We're not going to do that.
So just to kind of challenge this a little bit, most of my visibility into GRC, or a lot of it came from working in the credit card processing industry. That's where I got my start, was payment processing. Worked in there for 8 years for one of the world's largest payment processors. And I was there pre-PCI and I was there after PCI. And for the entire time that I was there, we had a flat network, and we basically just convinced our PCI that these 74 systems were the crown jewels that were in scope, and nothing else was in scope, even though the people in the call center in Poland could touch the data warehouse Oracle database port, here in the U.S. And when I left there, I went consulting. I wanted to pen test, and they're like, okay, like we'll let you do pen tests if you do PCI work. So I went and got my QSA. Went to San Francisco, got my QSA certification, and there were CPAs there also getting their certifications. And even though that certification requires you have like a certain number of years, kind of like a CISSP in security, they were somehow still getting it, even though they knew nothing about technology or cybersecurity, so they could go out and they could do CPA stuff and PCI stuff like in the same trip, in the same gig with the same company. So it's kind of a roundabout way of saying you can game some of these other things as well, right? Like I can fire my QSA company and hire another one if they found a bunch of stuff wrong and aren't willing to overlook stuff, right? Like it does go to the acquirer, and the CFO does have to sign the attestation of compliance. Like there are some like checks here where like if something happens, it's going to come back on some people for sure. And I've had, in my experience, Bank of America was the only acquirer that ever pushed back on anything and would throw a rock back at you and say, this is not good enough. You need more evidence or something like that. Most of the times I feel like nobody read that PCI report either. So is it, I mean, is this something that's just wrong with SOC 2 or, is it, and then you have the whole issue where I think somebody at the PCI Council at one point said nobody was PCI compliant at the moment of breach, right? Which, like, that's not how that works, right? Like, you can totally be compliant and have a breach because compliance is not evidence of imperviousness, right? Like there's no GRC tool or certification
I think what they
out
meant
there.
is between the date the auditor was there and the date that the breach occurred, there was drift, and none of the cases where they found the breach. It was that they still had all the controls in place, but the breach happened anyway, is that there was a drift. Because one problem that you have with all audits, every single one of them, even though you say, hey, SOC 2s, I'm looking at the past 12 months, you don't know if someone fabricated evidence the day before you arrived for something that happened 9 months ago. Like you're not going in to check that no one went into the Jira database and changed the timestamp on the ticket to say that they did something 9 months ago, right? It's like it's impossible to do, right? In practice. So, but I think that's what they meant. But in any case, there's something I typically tell people, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, AJ, because of your deep experience in GRC. Is I feel like those compliance requirements and the audits associated with them, it's kind of like psychotherapy. If you're doing it for your own sake, because you want to improve, and you're going to use this like a guideline, right? You're using this as a roadmap to how to improve security in your company, it's great. But if you're forced into it, if you have to show someone you're doing it, you're just going to go for the easy mode. You're going to find the most lenient auditor. You're going to do the more convenient thing possible just to check the box and not actually get the benefit of using the framework to your advantage. Does that resonate at all with your experience?
100%. Yeah, it's a mindset kind of thing where every single one of these frameworks could be gamed. I think in Adrian, your case, talking about PCI, I think one of the advantages are the kind of scope of your PCI assessment, depending on the total number of credit card transactions that you do a year. And that means you're going to get a Bank of America that has to deal with you if you're at a certain level. So, and I think that's something that's also missing from SOC 2, where we treat a SOC 2 for AWS the same as a 5-person startup. And it's like those two people should probably not have the same.
Those are not equivalent.
Right. So I think with PCI, as a company gets mature and you start working with one of the major financial providers, there's a level of like, oh, we can't BS because they're going to ask some questions. And just that, because of I think that scoping is similar with like FedRAMP and some of the government ones where it's like, hey, like, you might be able to do some of this new FedRAMP 20X stuff if you can try to like slide in. But if you're saying your FedRAMP high and you're trying to go work with the DoD, like you're gonna have to be able to prove that. Like that's gonna have to be real. And you're not gonna. That's FedRAMP's a different beast because it's not financially smart to even try to pretend with FedRAMP because it's so expensive just to even go down that journey. But yeah, I mean, it can be gamed, and I think a lot of companies now have went away from compliance, where I think we went through this phase with compliance where it was like, all right, everybody has to do compliance, but then it was like, hold on, we could use this to sell security. There was like probably in that 2019, 2022 phase where like being the most secure was a thing people wanted to talk about. Look at my controls, look at what I do. And I don't know what happened in the industry where that changed, but now it's just like, here's a report, here's a report. And it's now, again, these are all sales and marketing tools versus it's going to the dentist because you are going to go on TV and you want to get your teeth cleaned versus just doing your regular 6-month checkups that you're supposed to because you want to like actually have healthy teeth. And it's the difference. It's like, all right, like you're doing it for vanity metrics versus the actual reason that could be. And this is why I used to love SOC 2 and have done so much work in SOC 2 because I thought the flexibility of the framework allowed us to do what every other framework misses, because I think PCI is great, but it's very prescriptive. And it's like, hey, like some people's environment are completely serverless. So we need to change a little bit of this language for it to make sense. And you just couldn't do that. You would have to have like the auditor, the PCI and the ROC or the AOC make some weird notes about why they
compensating controls, baby.
Compensating
right,
controls.
and it's like, do we? And it's just so like, but SOC 2, there's an advantage supposedly where I could say I could actually have really custom designed controls that match what I'm actually doing, and I was like, hell yeah, this is where we can get to the good part of this and actually tell a good security story that's validated. But now that flexibility has been used as a weapon to simplify, make it super easy, and just go away from like the in-depth. And I think it's to your point, Alexandra, that like it's, and I felt bad because I kind of like talk a lot of shit on LinkedIn, but like I was talking to this head of GRC and he was like, well, look, AJ, like there's not, my job, how I'm being evaluated is getting through these audits. And if I get through these audits, my CISO looks like a superstar in front of the board because we have all these certifications. So if an auditor comes in and is telling me about how in depth they're going to go with security and start looking at this stuff, he's like, I'm not, again, the incentives are misaligned. I'm not incentivized to have an in-depth audit. I'm incentivized to get this done to give to my CISO so they can be a superstar. And it's like, well, that's what, and I'm like, you know what? That's fair. That's fair. Like, I can't ask you to go beyond because I'm standing on my high horse of GRC and I want it to be important when like you have a job to do and you're getting paid, man. Like I get it. And like you got to keep employed or they're going to find somebody who will do that. So the incentives are just so misaligned that I think that's where I don't know how you fix SOC 2. I think it's more of we need to lean into these other ones. We need to lean into the other industry specific ones and try to strengthen those up that if you're doing business at the highest level in those industries, whether that's healthcare, the financial industry, the government industry, I'm confident in the activities you're doing for compliance because of the people that you're working with.
And I want to do a segue to your book if I can, because what I personally believe is the solution here is we're talking about AI. I think people are talking about using AI to automate the crappy workflow we already have. Like, let's get the same SOC 2 with all its flaws. Let's just try to automate the reading of the 200 page. How about we do something that works instead of automating the stuff that doesn't work because of all
that's
the
great. Get out of here.
Right? I mean, I'm an idealist. What can I say? But
we're gonna have questionnaires forever.
So my mission in life is to try to say, absolutely, let's use automation, but let's use automation to get to the ground truth. Instead of asking people, are you practicing every day? I want to see what was the score of your last goal. I don't want to see how controls are designed. I want to see if they're working. Right? And we can do that. Let's look at outcomes.
Yes.
I don't want to know in precise detail what policies and procedures and guidelines and responsibilities you have for patch management. Is your stuff patched? Right? And we can automate this now. Everything has APIs. Everything, especially if you talk about cloud, and you can check this. And this is a segue to your book because you're talking about GRC engineering for AWS. So tell us a little bit more what you mean by that, and if that could be the actual alternative to trying to do that the old-fashioned way of sending an auditor
Right.
and looking at paperwork.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the motivation for the book, is because I think if GRC is going to survive, we have to meet the actual security where it's at, and actually embed in the security pipelines. And I think GRC has to get more technical. And for me, GRC engineering is all about taking what I know I have to prove, the compliance stuff, and what actually is happening in the security environment. And it's simply just saying, like, to your point, on these cloud providers, a lot of this stuff can be automated. A lot of this stuff is already being checked regularly, and a lot of the security teams have already turned on a security hub, a config, a CloudTrail, a GuardDuty, whatever, and the data's there. I just need to go ahead and start collecting it regularly, where now I'm not worried about proving compliance when the auditor shows up. I already know what's going on. I know what's going on regularly, and I can use, in my book, I talk about event-driven compliance, where that's just the way that anybody in these modern environments with so much data going on and so much activity, you can't have a manual compliance system. It should be based off of events that are going on. It should be based off of this person stood up this new resource, this person did this, or this resource is having this type of traffic, and then these activities are triggered that can be automated using Lambda functions, using Event Bridge, using step functions, using all these different things that exist, that AWS has made it very easy for us to capture the data, store it as evidence, and make it available for auditors. And I think, for me, like, the book starts with talking about my first chapter is about first principles thinking. Because I'm just like, before you even listen to anything else I'm saying in this book, I need you to rehash how you're thinking. And there's a something that Elon Musk said before that I thought about, Alexandre, that when you were talking, is that don't optimize a process that shouldn't exist. let's stop optimizing things that shouldn't exist anymore. Let's just rechange. And I asked 4 questions in that book of, like, why do we have this control? What data are we protecting? How does the security team handle this risk already? That's the problem that I think a lot of GRC professionals have, is they try to go buy a tool. They try to and say, hey, security engineer, implement this tool. And they're like, I already wrote a Python script 5 years ago that spits this out on a regular basis and feeds it to my SIEM. Like, could you just get that? And they're like, oh, it's JSON. Oh no, I can't read it. And it's like, yeah. Well, like, we got to get over that, GRC pros. Like, we got to be able to do this. So GRC engineering for me is all about, we went through this big movement of DevOps to DevSecOps. And for some reason, GRC thought that didn't involve them. It's just like, hey guys, security has shifted left. Let's bring compliance with it. The CI/CD pipeline is doing a lot of security scanning. I promise you, the evidence you need for a strong SDLC process for change control is not in JIRA tickets. They're not. That's the outcome of the good process. The actual stuff that's happening is in the pipeline. And guess what? You can go grab that. You can script it. You can send it to places. And I think a lot of times GRC pros have decided in their mind, auditors as well, the auditors are the biggest culprits. It's much easier for me to look at this screenshot that I know isn't true, that I know doesn't have the right information, than go and figure out how to understand more technical details. And to me, there's no excuse. Like, I kind of, my military background and being raised by a Marine, my dad used to always say, it's one of two things. It's a will issue or a skill issue. This is now a will issue. The APIs that exist with AI technology, with the ability to connect to every tool out there. We live in an API economy. We see it in AppSec, we see it in vuln management, we see it with IAM. Every other aspect of security is like, I'm going to go to the source. But in GRC, we're like, screenshot. And my whole book is challenging that mindset. And like, I have a lot of sections in the book where I know people are going to push back, like, well, my company won't support this. And I give you reasons why that's not true. And it's like, well, I don't have the technical skills. Well, here you can learn, man. Like, you can go do it. And it's about that. And like, I have a case study in there where it's like this company it's a solution that I've implemented in real life, but I kind of fictionalized it, where engineers wasted 400 plus hours on a SOC 2. And I know we have to hop, and I talk about a solution that allows us to actually automate all of those controls, and the engineers don't need to meet with auditors no more. And I posted about this recently, and auditors in my comments like, no way, I got to talk to the engineers, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, that's because you guys want to keep your old processes. You're not willing to adapt and learn what's
people
going
will
on.
Kick and scream when it comes to change. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. They don't want to learn new things. So what I'm hearing is GRC needs to learn to code.
They need to pick up. Yeah, you can't avoid it. Go learn some Python. Like, and you don't have to be the greatest Python developer known to man. Like, I think that's where everybody jumps to is like, oh, I got to learn to code. I got to become this elite. No, you just learn how to write a function. Learn what a variable is. Learn a dictionary. Learn some basics, and then you can get dangerous. And then it builds. Every single technical person, everybody that knows how to code started with Hello World. We all did it.
Yeah.
We all did it. So like, just go start with Hello World, man, and build from there.
All right, and that's all we got time for in this special SOC 2 edition of the Allison Supply Chains podcast. AJ, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun.
And thanks as always, Alexandre, for joining us as well.
This was a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this, and it was worth it. Thank you, AJ.
Did not disappoint. And if you liked what you heard and you're on a platform where you can like, subscribe, or leave a comment, please do so. We'd love to get your feedback. Stay safe and stay vigilant, and be sure to also check out the regular July edition of the podcast, also releasing around the same time.